I guess if I'm gonna tell you about my life, I should start with the moment everything started to shift. My name's Emily, and I'm 16, living in this quiet little suburb in Ohio where the most exciting thing is the Friday night football game, or maybe the new froyo place that opened last summer. Up until a couple of years ago, it was just me and my mom, Sarah, in our small house on Maple Street. Mom's a nurse, always working crazy hours at the hospital, so I got used to fending for myself. Microwave dinners, Netflix marathons, that kind of thing. We were a team, just the two of us against the world. But then David showed up, and suddenly, my world wasn't so simple anymore. Mom met David about 3 years ago at some community fundraiser for the hospital. I didn't think much of it at first. She'd dated guys before, but none of them ever stuck around. David was different, though. He was this software engineer, kind of nerdy, with wire-rimmed glasses and a habit of explaining tech stuff like he was teaching a class. He wasn't loud or pushy like some of the guys Mom had gone out with. He was soft-spoken, I guess. Always polite, always patient. But there was something about him that threw me off, like his smile never quite matched his eyes. It was like he was holding something back, and I couldn't figure out what. When Mom told me they were getting married, I didn't know what to say. I was 14 then, and the idea of a stranger moving into our house felt like someone had rewritten the rules of my life without asking me. I mean, I'd always pictured a dad as this big, confident guy, someone who'd toss a football in the backyard or tell cheesy jokes at dinner. David wasn't that guy. He was quiet, almost too careful, like he was afraid of breaking something if he said too much. I didn't hate him or anything. It's just, how do you let someone into your life when you've spent years building it without them? The wedding was small, just a courthouse thing followed by dinner at this Italian place downtown. I wore a dress Mom picked out, smiled for the pictures, and tried to act like I was okay with it all. But when David moved in, it was weird. His stuff started showing up in our house, his coffee mugs in the kitchen, his sci-fi books on the living room shelf. I'd come home from school and find him there, working on his laptop or fixing a leaky faucet, and it felt like I was living with a roommate I didn't choose. Mom was so happy, though, always going on about how David was good for us. I wanted to believe her, but I wasn't so sure. Those first few weeks were awkward as hell. Dinners were the worst. We'd sit around at the table, Mom trying to keep the conversation going while I picked at my food, and David asked these polite questions like, "How was school, Emily?" I'd mumble something like, "Fine," and go back to staring at my plate. It wasn't that I was trying to be rude, I just didn't know what to say to him. He didn't have kids of his own, so I could tell he was struggling too. Sometimes I'd catch him looking at me like he was trying to figure out how to crack the code to being a stepdad. I'd look away because honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted him to. I kept my distance at first. I'd stay in my room, blasting music through my headphones or texting my friend Mia about how weird it was to have this guy in my house. I didn't dislike David, he hadn't done anything wrong, but I wasn't ready to let him in either. Maybe I was scared that if I did, it'd mean things were really changing, that Mom and I wouldn't be enough anymore. Or maybe I just didn't know how to trust someone new. All I knew was that David was here now, and I had to figure out what that meant for me. Mom was working late more often after the wedding, her shifts at the hospital stretching into the night. I'd come home from school to find David in the kitchen, messing around with pots and pans or sitting at the table with his laptop, coding something I didn't understand. At first, I'd just grab a soda from the fridge and head upstairs, avoiding him like he was a pop quiz I wasn't ready for. But you can't dodge someone forever when you're living under the same roof, and little by little, things started to change in ways I didn't see coming. It wasn't like some big moment where we suddenly clicked. It was more like these small, random things that piled up. Like one morning, I was running late for school, stressing because I couldn't find my math homework. David was in the kitchen, pouring coffee into this ugly mug with a binary code joke on it. He looked up and saw me tearing through my backpack like a maniac. "Need a hand?" he asked, all casual. I shrugged, not expecting much, but he walked over, helped me dig through the mess, and somehow found the crumpled worksheet under a pile of gym clothes. "You're a lifesaver," I mumbled, surprised he'd even bothered. He just smiled, that half smile of his, and said, "Anytime, kid." I don't know why, but that stuck with me. It was the first time I didn't feel like he was trying too hard. Then there were the weekends. Mom would be at the hospital and David would be in charge of breakfast. He'd make these ridiculous stacks of pancakes like he was trying to impress me with his flipping skills, but half the time they'd end up lopsided or stuck to the pan. One Saturday, I came downstairs, still half asleep, and saw him wrestling with a batter-covered spatula. "You like chocolate chips in these, right?" he asked, glancing over like he'd been studying my breakfast habits. I nodded, kind of thrown off that he'd noticed. When he slid a plate in front of me, the pancakes were messy, but they were good, better than I expected. I caught myself smiling as I took a bite, and for a second, it didn't feel so weird to be sitting there with him. School stuff came up too. I'd be at the kitchen table, frowning at my history notes, and David would wander over asking what I was working on. At first, I'd give him one-word answers, homework or history, hoping he'd leave me alone, but he didn't push. He'd just nod and say something like, "U.S. history was my thing in high school. You covering the Civil War yet?" One time, I was struggling with this essay about Lincoln, and I don't know why, but I let him read it. I braced myself for some cheesy stepdad advice, but he just pointed out a couple of spots where I could explain things better and said, "You've got a knack for this, Emily. Keep it up." It wasn't a big deal, but it felt nice, like he actually cared about what I was saying, not just checking a box to be a good guy. The thing is, I started noticing stuff about David too, like how he'd hum these old classic rock songs when he thought no one was listening, or how he'd leave little notes for Mom on the fridge, stuff like, "Don't forget to eat, superstar." It was sweet, but there was always this shadow in him, you know? Sometimes I'd catch him staring out the window, his face all tight, like he was somewhere else entirely. I wondered what was going on in his head, but I wasn't about to ask. We weren't there yet. One evening, Mom got stuck at work during a big storm. Some accident on the highway kept the ER packed. David ordered pizza, the kind with extra pepperoni that I liked, and we ended up eating on the couch, watching some random nature documentary because neither of us could agree on a movie. The rain was pounding outside, and the house felt smaller, cozier somehow. He asked me about school again, but this time it didn't feel like small talk. "You seem kinda stressed lately," he said, not looking at me, just peeling the label off his soda bottle. I froze, not sure what to say. I mean, yeah, school was rough, cliques, grades, all that, but I wasn't used to anyone noticing. "It's whatever," I said, shrugging it off. He didn't push, just nodded and said, "Well, if you ever want to talk, I'm here." It was so simple, but it hit me hard. For the first time, I felt like maybe he wasn't just Mom's husband. Maybe he could be someone I could actually talk to. I didn't say much that night, but something shifted. It wasn't like we were suddenly best buddies or anything, but the awkwardness wasn't as heavy anymore. I started wondering if I'd been wrong about him, if maybe David wasn't here to mess things up, but to add something new. I wasn't ready to call him family or anything crazy like that, but I stopped running to my room every time he walked in. And that, I guess, was the start of it. The start of us figuring out how to be around each other, one clumsy step at a time. I don't know exactly when things started feeling different with David, but by the time fall rolled around, I wasn't dodging him anymore. We'd settled into this weird kind of rhythm, pancakes on weekends, him helping with my homework, me not totally hating it when he was around. It wasn't like we were tight or anything, but the house didn't feel so heavy with him in it. Still, I kept my guard up. I mean, he was Mom's husband, not my dad, and I wasn't about to get all cozy and pretend we were something we weren't. But then came this one night that changed everything. Like someone flipped a switch I didn't even know was there. It was a Friday in October, one of those chilly Ohio evenings where the air smells like leaves and wood smoke. Mom got called into the hospital for some emergency. Big surprise, right? She texted me around 5, saying she'd be stuck there till midnight, maybe later. I was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through my phone, when David poked his head in from the kitchen. "Looks like it's just us tonight," he said, holding up a couple of takeout menus. "Pizza or Chinese?" I shrugged, going for pizza because, well, pepperoni's always a safe bet. He grinned like he'd been hoping I'd pick that, and ordered a large with extra cheese, just how I liked it. We ended up eating at the kitchen table, the pizza box open between us, some classic rock playlist humming low from his phone. It was quiet at first, but not the awkward kind of quiet we used to have. I was picking at a slice when David leaned back in his chair and said, "So, how's school really going? You've been kinda quiet about it lately." I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. He'd asked about school before, sure, but this time it felt different, like he wasn't just making conversation to fill the silence. His eyes were steady on me, not pushy, just waiting. I could have brushed him off, said, "It's fine," like always, but something stopped me. I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was the way he looked at me, like he actually gave a crap, or maybe I was just tired of holding everything in. But I started talking, really talking. I told him about school, how it wasn't just homework and tests anymore, how my friend Mia was hanging out with this new crowd that made me feel invisible, how I'd bombed a math quiz last week and couldn't shake the feeling I was falling behind, not just in class, but in everything. How sometimes I'd sit in the cafeteria surrounded by people and still feel like I didn't belong anywhere. It all came spilling out, messy and raw, and I kept waiting for him to cut me off or tell me to suck it up. But David didn't. He just sat there, nodding every now and then, his pizza slice forgotten on his plate. When I finally stopped, my face hot and my voice shaky, he leaned forward a little. "That sounds like a lot to carry," he said, his voice low, like he was choosing his words carefully. "You know, when I was your age, I felt like that too, like I was trying to fit into a puzzle that didn't have a spot for me." He paused, then added, "It gets better, Emily. Not perfect, but better. And you're tougher than you think." It wasn't some big speech, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. No one, not Mom, not my teachers, not even Mia, had ever just listened like that. Like what I was saying mattered. I mumbled a thanks and looked down at my plate, my throat tight. We didn't say much after that, just finished eating and started cleaning up. But as I scrubbed a pan in the sink, David drying dishes next to me, something felt different. Lighter, maybe. Like I'd let him see a piece of me I usually kept locked away, and he hadn't made it weird or tried to fix it. He'd just been there. I caught myself glancing at him, noticing the way his glasses slipped down his nose, the way he hummed along to Springsteen without even realizing it. For the first time, I didn't just see Mom's husband. I saw David, someone who might actually get me. But that lightness scared me too. As we put the dishes away, I felt this tug in my chest, like I'd crossed a line I didn't know was there. I wasn't supposed to need him like this, was I? He was my stepdad, not some best friend I could spill my guts to. What if I was getting too close? What if this was all gonna backfire? I pushed the thought away, but it lingered, like static in the back of my mind. That night, lying in bed with the glow of my phone screen, I kept replaying our talk. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment things started to shift for real. A moment that felt so right, but carried a weight I wasn't ready to face. School nights were different, but David found ways to sneak into those too. I'd be at the dining table, wrestling with algebra or some English essay, and he'd wander over, pretending to grab a drink from the fridge. "Stuck on something?" he'd ask, leaning against the counter. At first, I'd shrug him off, but he had this knack for explaining things without making me feel dumb. Like one night, I was ready to chuck my math book out the window because quadratic equations were kicking my butt. That night in October, when I spilled my guts to David over pizza, left me rattled in a way I couldn't shake. I'd let him in, just a little, and it felt good, but also scary as hell. Like, what was I doing, getting all deep with my stepdad? I tried to act normal after that, sticking to our usual routine, grabbing breakfast together, him asking about school, me giving half answers. But something had changed, like a door had cracked open, and neither of us was in a hurry to slam it shut. Over the next couple of months, that door kept inching wider, and before I knew it, David wasn't just some guy in my house anymore. It started with these little habits we fell into. Saturday mornings were our thing now. I'd drag myself downstairs, still in my pajamas, and find David in the kitchen, flipping pancakes or trying something new like waffles with this goofy grin, like he was auditioning for a cooking show. One time, he got ambitious and tried adding cinnamon to the batter, which sounded weird but turned out amazing. "You're welcome," he said, sliding a plate my way, and I rolled my eyes but couldn't hide my smile. I started helping out, stirring the batter, setting the table, stuff I'd never bothered with before. It was so normal, almost boring, but it made the house feel warmer, like we were building something without saying it out loud. David sat down, sketched out a problem on a napkin, and broke it down step by step, tossing in a dumb joke about how numbers were just tiny hugs from the universe. I laughed, and for a second, I forgot how stressed I was. It wasn't just about math. It was like he was saying, "I've got your back," and I was starting to believe him. We started watching stuff together, too. Mom was always working late, so David and I would end up on the couch, flipping through Netflix. He was into these nerdy documentaries about space or history, and I'd tease him about it, but honestly, I didn't mind. One night, we got hooked on this series about the moon landing, and we stayed up way too late debating whether aliens were real. "You're telling me you believe in little green men?" I said, tossing popcorn at him. He laughed, dodging it, and said, "Hey, I'm keeping an open mind." It was dumb, but it was fun. Fun in a way I hadn't had with anyone in a while. I started noticing more about him too, like how he'd leave Mom little post-it notes on the coffee maker, reminding her to take a break, or how he'd hum Led Zeppelin while fixing the squeaky back door. But there were other things, quieter things. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at his laptop, his jaw tight, like he was carrying something heavy. Once, I walked into the kitchen and saw him rubbing his forehead, eyes closed, like he was trying to block out the world. I wanted to ask what was wrong, but I didn't. I wasn't sure I was allowed to, you know? He was still my stepdad, not my best friend, and there were lines I didn't know how to cross. The closer we got, the more I felt this weird pull inside me. I liked having David around, more than I wanted to admit. He wasn't just helping with homework or making breakfast. He was someone I could count on, someone who saw me when I felt like no one else did. But that scared me. I'd catch myself looking forward to our talks, replaying them in my head before bed, and it made my stomach twist. Was it normal to feel this way? I mean, he was family, sort of, but not really. I'd lie awake some nights, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling, wondering if I was making it all weird in my head. What if I was leaning on him too much? What if he noticed and pulled back? Or worse, what if Mom noticed? Thanksgiving was around the corner, and the air was getting colder, the streets lined with pumpkins and early Christmas lights. Mom was busier than ever, picking up extra shifts to cover holiday bills, so David and I were left alone more often. One Saturday, we decided to tackle the garage, digging through boxes of old junk. Mom's idea to get organized. We found my old skateboard, some scratched up records of David's, even a photo of me as a kid, grinning with a missing tooth. "Look at you," David said, holding it up, his voice soft. "You were a troublemaker even back then, huh?" I laughed, but my chest felt tight. It was like he was weaving himself into my past, my life, and I wasn't sure how to feel about it. That day, as we stacked boxes and swept the floor, I realized how easy it was to be around him now. The awkwardness was gone, replaced by this quiet understanding. But there was something else too, a flicker of something I couldn't name, something that made my heart race when he looked at me a second too long. I pushed it down, told myself I was being stupid, but it was there, growing like a shadow I couldn't outrun. And deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before that shadow caught up with us. Thanksgiving came and went, with Mom managing to get a day off so we could stuff ourselves with turkey and argue over who got the last slice of pie. It was nice, almost like the old days, but I kept catching myself glancing at David across the table, noticing how he laughed at Mom's stories or passed me the mashed potatoes without me asking. Things between us had gotten so easy lately. Too easy, maybe. By the time December rolled in, with Christmas lights popping up on every house in our Ohio suburb, I started feeling this knot in my stomach, like I was waiting for something to go wrong. I didn't know what, but it was there, growing every time David and I were alone together. Mom's schedule got crazier as the holidays got closer. The hospital was slammed. Flu season, accidents, you name it. So she was pulling double shifts, leaving David and me to hold down the fort. At first, it was no big deal. We'd fallen into this rhythm. Him cooking dinner, me doing homework at the kitchen table, maybe watching some dumb holiday movie after. But the more time we spent together, the more I noticed how much I was leaning on him. Not just for the little stuff, like him fixing my bike tire or explaining why my laptop kept crashing, but for the way he made me feel seen, I guess. Like I wasn't just some kid tagging along in Mom's life. One night, right before Christmas break, Mom got stuck at work again. It was one of those icy evenings where the wind howled outside, rattling the windows. David was in the living room flipping through TV channels, and I was supposed to be studying for a history test, but my brain was anywhere but the textbook. I kept stealing glances at him from the dining table, watching how he rubbed his forehead, his glasses slipping down his nose. He looked tired, more than usual. Not just long day at work, tired, but something heavier, like he was carrying a weight I couldn't see. I'd noticed it before, but tonight it hit me harder, maybe because the house was so quiet, just the hum of the heater and the flicker of the TV. "You okay?" I asked, my voice cutting through the silence. He looked up, startled like he'd forgotten I was there. "Yeah, just work stuff," he said, flashing that half smile that never quite landed. I didn't buy it. I'd seen him stressed before, but this was different. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes distant. I wanted to push, to ask what was really going on, but I didn't know how. Instead, I closed my book and walked over to the couch, sitting a couple feet away from him. "Work stuff, huh? Sounds like a load of crap?" I said, trying to keep it light. He chuckled, but it was sharp, like he was forcing it. "You're too smart for your own good, you know that?" We sat there for a bit, the TV droning on about some car commercial. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the cold outside or the way he looked so damn lost, but I scooted closer and leaned my head against his shoulder. It wasn't planned, I swear. It just happened, like my body decided before my brain could catch up. For a second, he went stiff, like he didn't know what to do. My heart was pounding, screaming at me to pull back, but I didn't. Then, slowly, he relaxed, his arm brushing against mine, and neither of us moved. The room felt smaller, warmer, like we were the only two people in the world. I could hear his breathing, steady but a little uneven, and it made my chest ache in a way I couldn't explain. "Thanks for everything, David," I whispered, barely loud enough to hear. I don't even know why I said it. Maybe I just needed to fill the silence. He didn't answer right away, but I felt his hand rest lightly on mine, just for a moment, like he was saying something he couldn't put into words. "You don't have to thank me," he said finally, his voice so quiet it almost got lost in the TV noise. We stayed like that, frozen in this weird, fragile bubble until the sound of a laugh track snapped me back to reality. I sat up, my face hot, mumbling something about needing to finish my homework, and bolted to the dining table. I tried to focus on my notes, but my head was spinning. What the hell was that? I wasn't supposed to feel like this, like I wanted to stay there, like I needed him in a way that wasn't just about pancakes or homework help. He was my stepdad, for God's sake. But the more I tried to shove it down, the louder it got. I kept thinking about how he'd listened to me that night over pizza, how he'd been there every time I felt like I was drowning. And now, sitting across the room, I could still feel the warmth of his shoulder, the weight of his hand on mine. It was too much. I glanced at him, and he was staring at the TV, but I could tell he wasn't watching it. His jaw was tight, his fingers tapping against the armrest like he was wrestling with something too. Did he feel it? The same weird pull I did? Or was I just losing it, turning nothing into something? I wanted to ask, to say something to break whatever this was, but I was terrified of what might come out, because deep down, I knew this wasn't just about being close anymore. It was something else, something I didn't have a name for, and it was scaring the crap out of me. All I could do was sit there, pretending to study, while the air between us felt like it was about to catch fire. That night on the couch with David left me all kinds of messed up. I kept replaying it in my head, the way I'd leaned into him, the way his hand brushed mine, the way it felt so right and so wrong all at once. I told myself it was nothing, just a weird moment, but the knot in my stomach wouldn't go away. Christmas was a week away, and our little Ohio town was decked out with twinkling lights and inflatable Santas. But inside our house, things were starting to feel like they were teetering on the edge of something I couldn't control. David and I went back to our usual routine: breakfast, small talk, him helping with my homework. But it wasn't the same. There was this unspoken thing between us, like a crack in the foundation that kept getting wider every time we looked at each other. Mom was barely around, her shifts at the hospital eating up every spare minute. She'd come home exhausted, crash on the couch, and be gone again before I could say much. I missed her, but part of me was glad she wasn't there to notice how weird I was acting around David. I caught myself watching him more, noticing stupid little things, like how he'd push his glasses up when he was thinking, or how his laugh sounded different when it was just us. But I also saw the way he'd get quiet sometimes, his eyes darting away if I got too close. It made me wonder if he was feeling the same pull I was, or if I was just imagining it, turning everything into a mess in my head. It all came crashing down one night, just a few days before Christmas. The air was sharp with cold, and snow was piling up outside, blanketing the street in this eerie hush. Mom had texted that she'd be late again. Some pileup on the interstate had the ER in chaos. David was in the kitchen reheating leftover chili, and I was sprawled on the living room floor, pretending to study for finals, but really just doodling in my notebook. The TV was on low, some holiday commercial jingle filling the silence. I don't know why, but I felt restless, like I needed to say something to make things normal again. So I got up and wandered into the kitchen, leaning against the counter. "Smells good," I said, nodding at the pot. David glanced over, his smile tight. "Hope it's edible," he said, stirring it slowly. He looked worn out, his shoulders hunched like he was carrying the world. "You sure you're okay?" I asked, the words slipping out before I could stop them. He paused, the spoon hovering over the pot, and for a second I thought he might actually tell me what was eating at him, but he just shook his head. "Long week," he said, turning back to the stove. I should have let it go, but I didn't. Maybe I was tired of the tension, or maybe I just wanted to feel close to him again. I stepped closer, close enough to see the faint lines around his eyes. "Come on, David, you've been off for days. What's going on?" My voice was softer than I meant, and it hung there, heavy. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes, something raw, like he was fighting to keep it locked away. "Emily," he started, then stopped, rubbing his forehead. Before he could say more, I did something stupid. I reached out and put my hand on his arm, just a light touch, but it felt like a spark went off. He froze, and so did I, my heart slamming against my ribs. For one endless second, we just stood there, the chili simmering, the house too quiet. Then he stepped back, his face tightening. "I should check the food," he mumbled, turning away so fast I almost didn't catch the way his hands shook. I backed off, my face burning, and mumbled something about needing to grab my phone. I ended up on the couch, staring at the TV without seeing it, trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. I wanted to disappear, to rewind the last 5 minutes and take it all back. But before I could even process it, the front door creaked open. Mom was home, her coat dusted with snow, her face pale from a long shift. "Hey, you two!" she called, kicking off her boots. She stepped into the living room, her eyes flicking between me and David, who'd followed her in from the kitchen. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice casual but sharp, like she'd picked up on something. "Yeah, fine," David said, too quick, his smile not reaching his eyes. I nodded, my throat tight, but I couldn't look at her. Mom's gaze lingered on me, then David, and I swear the air felt thick enough to choke on. She didn't say anything else, just dropped her bag and headed to the kitchen, muttering about needing coffee. But I saw it, the way her shoulders stiffened, the way she glanced back at us like she was trying to solve a puzzle. David busied himself with the dishes, avoiding my eyes, and I sat there, my hands clenched, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. That moment in the kitchen, it broke something. Not out loud, not in a way anyone could point to, but I felt it. Things with David couldn't go back to how they were. Not after I'd reached for him like that, not after the way he'd pulled away. And Mom, God, I didn't know what she'd seen, but it was enough to make her wonder. I lay awake that night, the snow glowing outside my window, my mind racing. What had I done? Was I making it all up, or was there really something there, something neither of us wanted to admit? All I knew was that our house wasn't a safe little bubble anymore. Mom was going to have to choose, whether she knew it yet or not, between me and David, between the family she wanted and the truth we were all dodging. And I was terrified because I had no idea who she'd pick or what it'd mean for me if she did.